Greetings and welcome to another edition of The Great Goddess. Praise be to Goddess. Praise be to Goddess. Now, today we have a biology lesson. And I know most of you don't need a lesson in biology. You know your biology pretty well. Pretty well. You know your biology and you know what biology entails and what it means. But do you know everything about biology? Are there some things that have evaded your notice that you haven't noticed about biology that you might have known but didn't know? So today we're going to have a biology lesson. And I want to preface this by saying that I am not opposed to men or males. This is not meant as a condemnation or damnation of men in any way. So all you men out there, just cool down, calm down. This is for the egotistical males, okay? This is for the egotistical males that vaunt themselves above women and say that they're better than women because they're created in the image of God and that women are a more imperfect image of God. This is to tell you that Goddess is real and Goddess is the one. And it's a biology lesson, very instructive. You might learn something, so listen carefully to this biology lesson. Main points. Female is the original gender. Now, we've talked about this before. Female is the original gender. And it came before male because Goddess, what really was creating feminine life in her own image. And so because she was creating feminine life in her own image, she naturally created the female first. And afterward, men were created. How do we know that females were first? Well, look at biology. The evidence is clear. Men are dependent on women for life. This is a very salient point. Men are dependent on women for life. Without women, men could not exist, okay? Men would be dead without women. They need women for reproduction. They need women for feeding the baby. They need women for just about everything. They need women. And so men wouldn't be able to live. They wouldn't be able to live without women. Women are essential to male life. And so that leads to the next point. Mother cells and daughter cells. What do we mean when we say mother cells and daughter cells? Well, we're talking about asexual reproduction. The very first cells reproduce themselves out of the original copy, okay? They would clone themselves, basically. And every single cell in your body does the same thing. And science calls them mother cells and daughter cells. The mother cells are the original cells, and the daughter cells are the cells that get reproduced from the mother cell. So, mother cells and daughter cells. Why do they call them mother cells and daughter cells? Because it's very similar to not the same, but very similar to the way a human being reproduces a cell for reproductive purposes, okay? It's very similar because it's a division. Only with the women, it's a haploid division where the egg cell gets half the number of chromosomes, and in asexual reproduction, the daughter cells get all the chromosomes. They get a perfect reproduction of the full set of chromosomes for mother-daughter cells. but it is instructive that it's very similar to what happens in a human egg cell. So mother cells and daughter cells imply that feminine was the original gender. Now, asexual reproduction in every cell in our bodies. This is a fact. Every cell in our bodies reproduces asexually. The only one cell that doesn't reproduce asexually are the sexual cells, the cells inside your ovaries reproduce sexually, but the asexual reproduction happens in every single cell in your body. Every single cell in your body has asexual reproduction. So cloning yourself is not a new thing. Your body clones itself all the time to reproduce new cells. And as old cells die, new cells are produced to replace them. So this is not a new thing. This is ancient, very ancient. Okay, it goes back to the beginning of life itself. Now, Y chromosome is a mutated X chromosome. And we've seen this before. We've seen this Y chromosome. It's malformed. It's mal-shaped, okay? All the chromosomes in the body, other than the Y chromosome, are all shaped like an X. They're all X chromosomes, all of them, including the female gender chromosome that makes us female is an X chromosome. So it's just like all the other X's in the body. Only the Y is unique. And the Y is unique because it's a mutant. It's a mutated X chromosome that lost a leg in the process of evolution. And it became the chromosome for the male gender. And so men are a mutation of women. That is what men are. Men are like a mutated woman, and they're not the original gender. They're not the original gender. The original gender was female, and the male evolved from the female. That doesn't mean men are more evolved than females or that they've evolved beyond females. It means that they are evolved from, that they descended from females. So female was the original gender, and then the male gender came after. What is a sperm? What is a sperm? A head full of DNA with a tail. This is an important point because these sperm that men produce, you'd think that they were the equivalent of the female egg cell, wouldn't you? You would think that they were equals in terms of, they're equals in terms of the amount of DNA they contain. Except a sperm doesn't have any of the equipment necessary for reproducing life, okay? It's got a spindle in its tail, and that's about it. It's got a spindle in its tail. But it doesn't have any of the equipment necessary for life. It doesn't have the cell, which is the egg cell. It doesn't have the organelles. It doesn't have any of the RNA or any of the equipage necessary for life. All it has is the DNA and the spindle in its tail. And all it is a head packed full of DNA with a tail attached. And so the male sperm is inferior to the egg cell because the egg cell already contains everything that's necessary for life, whereas the male sperm is lacking all of these things. So again, woman is the source of life. Men are just an addendum to that. There's nurse cells. Nurse cells take care of the baby sperm. Sperm are so primitive, they can't feed themselves and they can't supply themselves with energy and they can't take care of themselves. They need a nurse cell to keep them alive. And the nurse cell reproduces the sperm that provides all the nourishment the sperm needs, and it cares for the sperm throughout its life cycle. It gives it the nourishment it needs to function. So the sperm is helpless without these nurse cells. And so once again, the role of nurse, mother, and that is female in nature. Even though it's contained in the male body, it's female in nature. So the nurse cells care for these sperm, and the sperm couldn't live without them. The egg cell contains everything necessary for life. Now, we've already spoken of this. The egg cell contains all the organelles. It contains all the RNA. It contains the cell walls and half the DNA. All the sperm has is the other half of the DNA. So the egg cell contains everything necessary for life. Someday soon, they'll be able to cross 2 egg cells to make a female child. And then we won't need a sperm to make a baby. You can actually clone a human being or combine 2 egg cells from 2 different women to make a human being. And you don't need sperm to fertilize the egg cell. You can make a human being just that way. Just with 2 egg cells from 2 different women, you can make a female child. So the sperm isn't really necessary for life. And you can't do the same thing with 2 sperms. You can't cross 2 sperms because there's no egg cell there to take care of it. What are you going to do? You can't do it. Lesbian lizards reproduce asexually. They are stimulated by sex to clone themselves. No males are necessary. So these lesbian lizards are fascinating. They mate with each other, and the mating stimulates them to clone themselves. They produce a full clone of themselves out of their own egg cells are diploid instead of haploid. So they have all the equipage ready for a full lizard, and they clone themselves out of their own genetic material. So it's fascinating that it's proof once again that the male isn't strictly necessary for reproduction. Did you know there's a species of fish with 4 genders? And 3 of those genders are female. 3 are female, and only 1 is male. The fish transform themselves into males out of necessity when there are no other males around. So these fish are able to transform from female to male when there's no other males around to mate with the other fish. The female, one of the females in the community transforms into a male to provide the sperm necessary for reproduction. The fish transforms from a female into a male, and then they return to being female afterward. So after they're done living out their life cycle as a male, they return to being female fish after they're done being males. Just fascinating what you find in the animal world. Men don't have wombs to give birth to a baby. All they produce is sperm. So there's the womb and the sperm, and men just produce sperm and they don't have a womb to grow a baby in. In fact, you might have heard that recently that a male gave birth to a baby. Well, guess what? They transplanted a female's womb into his body He couldn't do it by himself. He had to have a female womb. No womb, no baby. An all-male God is a mad idea. How can God have a son all by himself if all he produces is sperm to fertilize an egg? And this is a very salient point. How can God be a man or be modeled on the male of the species if all God produces is sperm? How can he get new life? He doesn't have egg cells with all the equipage necessary to begin life. And he doesn't have a womb to grow a baby in. All he makes is sperm. All he makes is sperm. So how is our God male? How is our God male? How is male the model for God? How is male the model for God? How do we get new life out of a male who only produces sperm? It makes no sense for there to be an all-male God. There might be a male and a female God, or a female God, but there's got to be a female God. There can't be an all-male God. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And it's a fantasy invented by men who had delusions of superiority over women. Goddess is self-fertile. She needs no male god to produce new life. So just like the whiptail lizard, the goddess is self-fertile. She doesn't need anyone else to fertilize her eggs. She creates new life out of herself, and she births it out of her womb. She births the whole universe out of her womb and creates new life. She creates new life out of herself, just like a mother would. She has left us many clues in nature as to her identity as female. And we've already talked about this. We've talked about all the clues in biology that lead us to the inescapable conclusion that Goddess is a female. She is definitely female because she produces new life out of herself just like a female. So the Goddess must be female. I'm Sarah Jane Alphawolf signing off. Have a terrific week and take care.